You know that feeling when you're staring at a blinking cursor on a totally blank screen?
Oh, yeah.
Or like maybe you're looking at a completely trashed garage that you were supposed to clean this weekend, and your brain just, it just completely flatlines.
Right. It is the ultimate freeze response. I mean, the sheer scale of the task basically shorts out your executive function, leaving you completely paralyzed.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this today, because it's like we're reverse engineering the human operating system to figure out why we stall.
And ideally, how we can upgrade our own software.
Right, because you know you need to start. You really want to start, but instead you end up, scrolling through your phone for 45 minutes, feeling this slow, agonizing drip of guilt.
We've all been there.
So today on the deep dive, we are pulling from a wildly diverse stack of sources. We've got cognitive behavioral therapy, Japanese manufacturing philosophies, graphic design color theory, and James Clear's atomic habits. All to figure out how you, the curious learner out there, can master new skills without that overwhelming anxiety.
Because if you look at the through line across all these fields, there is this core architecture to human progress. Whether you are painting a canvas or, passing a standardized test or running a global factory, success really relies on breaking down massive anxiety-inducing goals into invisible, practically frictionless micro-actions.
Frictionless micro-actions, I like that. But before we can build that progress, we really have to understand what stops it in the first place, right? Like, why is starting so incredibly hard?
It's the biggest hurdle.
Right, and one of our sources focuses entirely on this idea of the fear of the blank canvas in art. It points out that the sheer emptiness of a canvas literally demands perfection.
It's intimidating.
It is. We place this immense, crushing pressure on ourselves to create something incredible right out of the gate. And the weight of that expectation is just paralyzing.
Yeah, and we see that exact same mechanism described in our clinical source from Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, Los Angeles. They break down the fact that procrastination is, it's rarely about laziness.
Which is a huge relief to hear, honestly.
Right. It is actually a deeply ingrained cycle of avoidance and anxiety. So we delay because a task feels unpleasant or overwhelmingly large, and when you put it off, you get this rush of short-term relief.
Oh, wow. So your brain is essentially rewarding you for avoiding the threat.
Exactly. It's a biological reward.
But the trap is that the delay fuels long-term anxiety. I mean, the project doesn't magically go away, the deadline gets closer, and the task feels even more overwhelming. You're caught in this devastating negative feedback loop.
Yeah, it spirals fast.
But I struggle with the underlying logic here. If our brains are hardwired by evolution to seek short-term relief, to avoid things that cause psychological pain, aren't we basically fighting millions of years of human biology every time we sit down to work?
Oh, you are absolutely fighting biology. Your brain perceives that massive, ambiguous project as a metabolic threat.
A metabolic threat, like a predator.
Basically, yeah, a massive drain on your energy reserves.
Yeah.
Your brain wants to conserve energy to survive. And this is the exact reason why sheer willpower is the completely wrong tool for the job.
Because it runs out.
Right. You cannot fight millions of years of evolutionary survival mechanisms with brute force alone. Willpower depletes. So to win, you have to trick your biological threat response by radically lowering the barrier to entry.
So shrinking the start until it doesn't even register as a threat anymore?
Exactly. Bypass the anxiety by making the start ridiculously, laughably small.
Which brings us to the antidote to that paralysis. The CBT source outlines something called the 5-minute rule, and the deal you make with yourself is incredibly simple. You just, you commit to doing the dreaded task for just 5 minutes exclusively.
Just 5 minutes.
That is all. You aren't committing to finishing the project or, even writing a whole chapter. Just 5 minutes of focus.
And neurologically, this removes the threat. Your amygdala actually stops sounding the alarm because 5 minutes is a totally manageable expenditure of energy.
It's safe.
Right, it's safe. And the clinical data shows that usually, within those 5 minutes, momentum builds. The friction we feel is almost entirely in the transition between tasks, not the task itself.
That is such a good point. The transition is the hard part.
Yeah, once you are in motion, the brain transitions out of avoidance and enters a state of flow.
They do offer some strict guardrails, though, to make those 5 minutes actually work. Like, you have to put your phone completely out of sight, out of mind.
Crucial.
You might use browser plugins to block distracting websites. And here's a tactic I loved from the source. If a distracting thought pops up, like, oh, wait, I need to pay the electric bill. Do not stop working. Have a piece of scratch paper right next to you, write the thought down, and basically promise your brain you will deal with it later.
Yeah, protecting that tiny window of focus is paramount. And James Clear takes this to an even more extreme place in his framework from Atomic Habits. He advocates for the 2-minute rule.
2 minutes.
Yeah, if you are trying to establish a brand new habit, the action should take less than 2 minutes to complete.
It's like getting into a freezing cold pool. Instead of staring at the water, shivering, and dreading how shocking it's going to be, you just commit to putting your big toe in. And once the toe is wet, the rest of the body inevitably follows.
That's a great analogy. And we see this principle applied beautifully in the blank canvas source for artists, too. They suggest giving yourself explicit permission to make bad art.
Make bad art. I love that.
Right. Lower the stakes entirely. You don't sit down to paint a masterpiece. You sit down to apply a single wash of background color just to eliminate that terrifying white space.
Get rid of the blankness.
Exactly. They also recommend sensory rituals, like lighting a specific candle to neurologically signal to your brain that it's time to transition into the work.
Okay, so 5-minute burst or 2-minute habit definitely gets your toe in the pool and breaks that freeze response, and I think everyone listening is probably wondering, this 5 minutes isn't going to write a novel, and it definitely won't get you through your final exams. How do we take that initial spark of momentum and build an actual engine out of it?
Well, that requires a fundamental shift from relying on motivation, which is fleeting, to relying on structural systems.
And we have a really brilliant framework for that from the Bowdoin College source. They focus on how to break down massive academic projects. Step 1 is defining milestones, which, makes sense. But step 2 is where the magic happens. You must define the individual tasks needed to reach those milestones using highly specific verbs.
Highly specific verbs, because ambiguity is the enemy of action. The brain hates vagueness, because vagueness requires decision-making.
And decision-making burns energy.
Exactly.
So if you write work on paper on your to-do list, that is vague and terrifying. Your brain stalls. But if you write 300 words or proofread the introduction, you have given your brain a really concrete directive.
Yes, you've removed the decision fatigue.
Right. Then you put those tasks in a logical order and you add them to your calendar by working backward from the due date. The Bowdoin Guide actually recommends working in sessions of 25 to 90 minutes, and this is key, deliberately overestimating how long things will take to build in buffer time.
So they're actively transforming a massive abstract goal into a concrete system of behaviors. And this mirrors the core philosophy in Atomic Habits perfectly. James Clear presents a fascinating argument here. He says if you want better results, you should actually forget about setting goals altogether and focus entirely on your systems.
Wait, I have to admit, I struggle with that idea. Forget about setting goals. If I don't have a massive, audacious goal to aim for, I feel completely directionless. Like every corporate seminar or motivational speaker ever tells you that setting huge goals is the key to success. How does a daily system replace that overriding drive?
I know, it feels totally counterintuitive.
Right.
But let's connect this to the dopamine system in the human brain. Goals are simply the results you want to achieve, right?
Right.
Systems are the processes that lead to those results. If your entire focus is on the goal, say, running a marathon, you have created an all-or-nothing mindset for yourself.
Oh, I see. You are basically in a constant state of failure until the moment you finally cross the finish line.
Exactly. And living in a constant state of perceived failure is exhausting. It drains your motivation. Systems, on the other hand, release dopamine with every small win. If your system is run for 10 minutes today and you do it, you win. You get a dopamine hit. That neurochemical reward reinforces the behavior, making your brain actually want to execute the system again tomorrow.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Clear breaks this down into 3 layers of behavior change in the book. You have outcomes, which is what you get, processes, which is what you do, and identity, which is what you believe. This is a massive paradigm shift. Really, every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to be.
Yes.
So you aren't trying to read a book. By reading for 2 minutes, you are casting a vote that you are a reader.
Because true behavior change is identity change. Once you fundamentally believe you were a certain type of person, the habits follow as a totally natural expression of that identity.
And to help build those habits, the sources outline the 4 laws of behavior change. To make a good habit stick, you manipulate your environment to make the action obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying.
Right.
And to break a bad habit, you just invert the laws. You make it invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying.
You are architecting your surroundings to make the right choice, the path of least resistance.
Habit stacking is the perfect example of this. You pair a new habit you want to build with a current habit you already do automatically every single day, using time and location as cues. So, like, after I pour my morning coffee, which is the established habit, I will meditate for 1 minute.
You anchor the fragile new behavior to an incredibly strong pre-existing neural pathway. And taking a step back here, this concept of compounding kinase systems is far more than just a personal productivity hack. This exact methodology has rebuilt global economies.
Oh, yeah. This is where we get into Kaizen, which is essentially, well, it's atomic habits applied to an entire factory of thousands of people. It's the compound interest of tiny, relentless improvements at an industrial scale.
Yeah, Kaizen is a Japanese term translating to change for better or continuous improvement. Its modern application traces back to post-World War II Japan. American advisors, particularly a statistician named W. Edwards Deming, went to Japan to assist in rebuilding their manufacturing sector.
Okay.
Deming's philosophy was that you don't need massive, radical overhauls to improve a company. You need microscopic, daily improvements made by every single worker on the floor.
And this philosophy became the bedrock of the famous Toyota production system, and it requires participation from the CEO all the way down to the assembly line workers, right?
Yeah.
Like, anyone has the authority to pull the cord and stop the line if they spot a way to make a tiny improvement.
Exactly. They utilize very specific frameworks to expose where those improvements need to happen. One foundational tool is the 5S movement. It is a system designed entirely around creating order in the workspace. Concepts like SERI, which means creating order and removing unnecessary items, and SEISO, which focuses on relentless cleanliness.
It is essentially Marie Kondo, but for industrial manufacturing.
That's a perfect way to put it. The underlying psychology is that physical clutter creates cognitive clutter. If a worker has to walk 10 extra steps around the pile of boxes to get a wrench or search through a disorganized toolbox, that is a system failure.
Right.
It drains cognitive and physical energy. In Kaizen, they categorize these failures using the 3 loss philosophy. That's Muda, Mura, and Miri.
Let's explore how these show up, because I think everyone listening can relate to these in their daily lives.
Well, Muda translates to waste. They identified 7 specific types of Muda in manufacturing, like overproduction or unnecessary transportation.
Yeah.
But think about the workspace you are sitting in right now listening to this. How much Muda is on your desk?
Oh man. Let's see. Open browser tabs you aren't using, notifications pinging on your phone, files scattered everywhere.
Exactly. That is all waste demanding your brain's attention.
Then there's Mira, which refers to deviations or inconsistencies in a process.
Right. If you study for 10 hours on a Sunday and then don't look at the material again until Thursday, your process is full of Mura. And that imbalance leads directly to the third Mu, which is Muri.
Muri meaning the overloading of employees or machines. So if you are pulling an all-nighter to cram for a presentation, you are experiencing severe Muri. You are overloading your biological system because your daily habits had too much Mura, or inconsistency.
Spot on. And to systematically eliminate these losses, Kaizen relies on the PDCA cycle. Plan, do, check, act. You plan a tiny change, you do it on a small scale, you check the data to see if it actually reduced waste or friction, and if it did, you act to standardize it as the new baseline.
It is the scientific method applied to daily operations.
Completely.
But okay, standardizing processes and eliminating waste makes total sense for assembling cars or organizing a garage, but how does this logical, highly rigid system apply to something purely intellectual or highly subjective? Standardizing car parts is one thing, but how do you standardize language acquisition or creating art?
It's a valid question. But standardizing processes isn't just for car parts. It is actually how the human brain standardizes learning. We have sources today showing these exact Kaizen principles operating in both academic test prep and graphic design.
Really? Okay, looking at the academic side, the British Council's Guide for IELTS Preparation, which is a massive English language proficiency test, reads exactly like a Kaizen manual. They explicitly warn against the Mira of binge studying.
Oh, yes.
They state that half an hour of daily study is far more effective than a few hours once a week. They are telling you to rely on compounding daily interest.
They also insist on breaking the massive goal of learning English into the core 4 skills. Reading, writing, listening, and speaking.
Yeah.
You isolate the variables so you can build targeted systems for each one.
And the specific tactics they offer are all about reducing cognitive load, like their underlining technique for reading comprehension. You don't just passively read a dense text. You skim it, find the core points, physically mark them, and then read it again. It's a deliberate, systematic process. They also differentiate between visual mapping techniques, which I found fascinating.
Yeah, this is where the neurology of learning comes into play. If you are trying to memorize vocabulary, the guide suggests using a mind map, which utilizes a radial structure.
Radial meaning.
The core idea is in the center, and related ideas branch out in all directions. Neurologically, this taps into associative memory. Your brain loves to link words with images, colors, and spatial relationships.
But if you are organizing complex concepts or planning an essay, they suggest a concept map, which looks more like a top-down tree structure.
Right, because that taps into hierarchical processing. It helps your brain understand cause and effect.
The guide also emphasizes practicing under timed conditions. And this isn't just about speed, is it? It's about state-dependent memory.
Exactly. By artificially creating the urgency and constraint of the actual exam, you train your nervous system to operate under pressure. On test day, you bypass the amygdala's freeze response because your brain recognizes the environment. You've lowered the barrier to entry when it matters most.
It is incredible how universal these mechanics are. But what about pure creativity? Because we have a fascinating source on graphic design color theory from Sylvia Pizarro-McCants. She argues that even art requires a systemic framework. You don't just throw paint at a canvas, you utilize the color wheel.
Because color isn't just aesthetic, it is a communication tool that evokes highly predictable psychological and physiological responses.
Instead of it just talking about warm colors versus cool colors, where warm is exciting and cool is calming, McCants dives into systemic color harmonies. Take complementary colors, for example. Those are opposites on the wheel, like blue and orange.
The reason complementary colors create such high contrast and visual tension is purely biological. When you place them next to each other, they overstimulate different photoreceptors in your eye simultaneously. It is visually loud. It demands attention.
Contrast that with analogous colors, which sit right next to each other on the wheel, like blue, blue-green, and green.
Analogous colors are harmonious and soothing because they require much less cognitive load to process. The eye easily transitions between them without that jarring overstimulation. And then you have triadic colors, 3 evenly spaced colors on the wheel, which offer a systemic way to achieve something vibrant but mathematically balanced.
The blank canvas source also leans heavily into this idea. One of their primary strategies for overcoming artists' block is to intentionally limit your palette. But here's my question. Doesn't putting a strict framework around art, like limiting your palette or strictly forcing yourself to use analogous colors, doesn't that kill the creative spark? Doesn't the system make the art feel robotic?
That is a very common fear. But the reality is the exact opposite. Infinite choice is paralyzing. If you have every color in the world available, you experience the blank canvas syndrome. Constraints actually breed creativity.
Because constraints force you to problem solve within a sandbox.
Exactly. By using a framework like color theory to artificially limit your choices, you drastically reduce cognitive overload. Returning to our Kaizen terms, you are eliminating the overloading of your brain's decision-making centers. By removing the burden of deciding what colors to use, your brain is freed up to actually enter that flow state we talked about earlier. It focuses purely on how to use them. The system creates the safe space for the art to happen.
Wow, that is a powerful perspective shift. Whether you are prepping for a high-stakes corporate meeting or learning a new language or staring down a blank canvas, the underlying formula is exactly the same. You have to drop your barrier to entry. Use the 5-minute rule or the 2-minute rule to get your toe in the water.
Stop obsessing over the final goal and start casting small daily votes for the identity you want to hold.
Apply Kaizen to your physical and mental workspace. Eliminate the waste and friction that get in your way. And finally, lean into frameworks, whether it's a study schedule or a color wheel. Constraints are what set your creativity free. Ultimately, making progress isn't about taking giant leaps. It's about making doing the right thing as easy as humanly possible.
And as we wrap up, there is a final provocative thought drawn directly from the architecture of Kaizen that is really worth exploring on your own. When a failure occurs on the Toyota factory floor, they use a root cause analysis tool called the 5 whys.
The 5 whys.
Yeah, they literally ask why 5 times to drill down past the surface symptom to the actual disease.
That is brilliant.
So if you find yourself endlessly procrastinating a specific task, even after trying the 5-minute rule, even after clearing the clutter from your desk, try applying the 5 whys to yourself. Ask yourself why you are avoiding it. Then ask why to that answer and keep digging. You might just find that your roadblock has absolutely nothing to do with the task itself, but is deeply tied to a hidden conflict with your own identity.
That is a profound question to ask yourself the next time you are staring at that blinking cursor. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you take everything you've learned here and use it to take your very first 5-minute step today. We will see you next time.